Hello and welcome to another episode of Hometown Hauntings. Today I have two really great guides with us that are brothers from San Antonio. So welcome Eli and Rich.
Hola.
Yeah, so I want to know who got started first and then who got drug in after.
Well, it would be me starting first, and I started about 3 years ago, be 2022.
Okay.
I did take a little time off 2 months ago, but I'm back. And then I had brought my older brother in, Richard. So kind of an interesting story with us. I'm Eli Richard, but I'm known as Ghost Man, and he's Richard Stanley, and he's known as Ghostbuster. So we're two different people.
This is why I'm not confused. And Rich, how did you get drug in? Was it just like, hey, I have something fun that you can come do with me, or
Something very interesting. When you're sort of kicking the tires, what am I going to want to do with, extra time that I have? When you hear ghost tours or ghost adventures, you really get excited. I did. He said, hey, I found, a great opportunity to go out and find ghosts. And I thought, ghosts aren't real, right? And then I said, this sounds interesting. I got drugged into it and I love it. Eli is a fantastic guide. At the same time, different people have different styles, but I got into it and I've never looked back, except over my shoulder for ghosts.
way to put it. Do you both do the same tours, or are you on different tours, or how does that work with your schedules?
We do same tours. Richard handles mostly on the weekend, and I work through the week, but we do all the different tours, and that would be the Haunted Pub Crawl. That would be the Ghost Tour, Ghost of Old San Antonio Tour, as well as Madams of Mayhem. And those are the tours that we specialize in.
Okay. Do you have a favorite one that you do?
Yeah, well, for me, I really like the Madams of Mayhem Tour. It's just that part of town. There's a lot of activity here in San Antonio, especially we know about the Alamo, and that area just has a lot of otherworldly experiences that are very interesting, as well as the Alamo Central. So
yeah. What about you, Rich? Which one do you prefer to do?
I prefer the haunted pub crawl. Everybody has a great time. That's interesting because you have to temper that with, let's have a good time, but let's not have so much of a good time that we don't, recognize, paranormal contact. So we're always sort of doing that, trying to pick a favorite tour. They're all great tours. I love them all, but I would say the pub crawl, because you're right around the Alamo in those, local hotels. And there's so much history and paranormal activity right there in the Alamo. It's just a lot of fun for me. So I take the pub crawls any day.
Very fun. Are you both from, or I guess it would be both from, did you guys grow up in San Antonio, or did you move there later on in life?
Well, I'll kind of grab the question list. So Rich and I were both born in El Paso, Texas. We're native Texans. Dad worked for the government, so we spent some time growing up on the West Coast. And when our parents passed away, one of the things they said was to go back to Texas. We both ended up coming back to Texas. We're here, and in San Antonio, we have family that's been here for quite some time. And so it's just great to be back.
Yeah, I had just went to San Antonio about a month ago for the first time ever, and we just kind of did it. We were driving to Arizona as a stop on the way. I could have spent a whole weekend there just checking things out. It definitely put the Alamo in perspective.
Yes.
Especially we went inside and saw that map they have, where it's the 3D map of everything. And my husband commented, they did all of this without drones.
Yes, they did.
That was like the most amazing thing to us, was they did it without any kind of modern technology, like breaching the wall. And they did this all without like imaging and drones, and there was no spyware, but like it was just spy people back then, like spyware. And that was the funny thing, was I like when you see this stuff in history books, you're like, oh, okay, that's cool. But then as a grown-up, you go back to it and you look at it and you learn it again. And you're like, whoa, this is actually really impressive the way all of this went down. And of course, now I understand why this place is haunted, or why there's ghosts that come and go out of here, kind of thing. Did you have interest in history and that like kind of history or ghosts growing up, and did they collide at all?
I'll grab this again. When we grew up, he has been involved with the paranormal for generations. And that's just a fancy word for saying, and so doing this, it was natural for us. Both him and I have very different backgrounds with it. Grandfather, we called him Papa C. He was one of the original settlers out in West Texas. And our great grandmother, his wife, she was Chickasaw, and translated would be Little Mama. And so some of the things I share on my tours from the Native American perspective, how to call the spirits. And so Richard and I just have different ways of doing that. And Rich, did you want to add in any particular way you like to call the spirits?
Yeah, so I've always been fascinated by the paranormal. When you're a kid, you're called, hey, I'm seeing ghosts, and your mother and father are like, no, you're not. No more sugar for you before bedtime. I remember, Eli mentioned how we had moved. Our dad worked for the feds, so we were mobile a lot. We didn't spend a lot of time in any particular place, but we did spend a little time on a farm in Delaware. And it was a 200-year-old home, very paranormally active. And I remember as a child, the things that I saw happening, you sort of, when you're that age, you're told, oh, that, ghosts aren't real. And the things we saw were just so freaky. And we, sort of compartmentalized and buried that stuff because you don't believe it's real. But looking back, that's what started my fascination was, hey, are ghosts real? Is this stuff real? And from that point forward, we've just had our own experiences. Our families had experiences. But the one sort of central theme is that in the back of my mind, I always ask myself, are ghosts real? So always asking yourself, what did I see? But growing up in a house like that in Delaware and then moving to the West Coast and throughout the US kind of gives you a good footprint as to different areas. But we always look back to one of our favorites. And I think being a kid in that haunted house, a 200-year-old home on the East Coast really sort of piqued my interest. And that's why I've been getting involved in the dangerous side. Unlike Eli, who's more safe, I'm more into the paranormal where I'm, messing with Sasquatch. We're trying to get a result. We want, action. So we get into trouble. He doesn't always approve of it, but I do because it's a lot of fun.
I agree that it's fun and you seem to be enjoying it. And I mean, you're here now, so you're safe. And
Yes.
I always joke that when I see something like last week, it was nighttime. I was getting doing something in the kitchen, getting ready for the next day. And I saw something like a reflection in the window. And I was like, oh, that's weird, thinking it was the dog or something. And I was like, oh, the dog's not there. And I was like, huh. I was like, maybe it's an alien. I'm like, I don't think it'd be going through this, like, what could it be that I saw? And I was like, I'm not sure. I'm like, oh, well, like it will come back. Or you just kind of think, like, I'll see it again. It's a normal thing that I'm like, okay, well, let's just wait for it to happen again. Whereas I think 10 years ago, I would have saw something. I probably would have been crawling to my bed thinking about it. And now I'm just like, okay, we'll wait. So it's just kind of become like something that you are interested in. And it definitely, like, I think the more you learn, there's a point where you kind of welcome that and you want to learn more so you're not fearful. But then it gets to the point where you're just like, that's good. I've had enough.
Yeah, right.
Time to turn the lights back on.
Yes.
Anything that comes to mind?
Several things pop into my mind. Again, Rich and I have had a lot of experiences. We talk about it quite a bit, but when we talk about certain phenomena, just so the viewers understand, we say ghost a lot. Does anyone really know what that is? So in the old German, it would be Geist, and the Anglo-Saxon Geist, and then we say ghost is spirit. And we have different forms that they take sometimes, orbs being one of them, shadows and again, there's other phenomena we could go into. Seeing those type of things, the Mayhem tour over by the old jail, I had a tour one time, and one of the visitors on the tour had a shadow figure. She was taking camera. She's a professional photographer, and she was shoved down by the shadow figure. But before that, we had a manifestation, shadows, and I did say, it's time to pull back because there's a lot of activity. A shadow figure had shoved her. She was screaming. We went back, got her, made sure she was okay. But that activity shows you be careful in some of these places because not all phenomena is positive. You do get negative phenomena, especially in that old jail where the last person to die here in San Antonio faced his fate. Clement de Apollino.
Yes, I got something to add to that. Madams of Mayhem, but that's one of my favorite tours after pub crawl because of the activity that folks get over there. As Eli mentioned, he had a run-in, or one of his guests had a run-in with a shadow. We've had other issues over there just in that general area by the commandancia, by the haunted jail. Just in that general area, there's an uneasiness, a weirdness, and many different ghost tours come through there. There's kind of a tight little alley area, and everybody is always kind of like freaked out a little bit because you just pick it up in the air. It's like electrical in that area. Yes. And, he had a bad run-in. I had a different run-in on one of my pub crawls, I had a gentleman show up 3 years after he did a pub crawl. And he's like, "Hey, ghost man, Ghostbuster, do you remember me?" And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't. He goes, "I was on your tour 3 years ago." And I said, "Well, welcome back. Hope you're
Yeah.
going to have a great time." And he said, "No, no, no, you don't understand. I'm here to give it back to you." And I'm like, "Oh boy, might be crazy." When he goes, "I was here 3 years ago when I picked up a demonic force." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is just a ghost tour, guys." And I had a decently large crew, and they were starting to get freaked out because this guy is saying these things. It turns out he did. 3 years ago, he picked up something and went home with him. It was some kind of a poltergeist that just was tearing his life up. His wife said, "Honey, go back to that ghost tour on the Alamo and return what you got." So he showed up and said, "Sir, I've got to return what I got." So long story short, we ended up walking in through that crazy haunted alley that is over by the Commandancia and by the haunted jail. And we were taken to the cathedral, for goodness sakes. We don't know what to do with this guy. His claw marks are still on the outside of the cathedral doors. He was legitimately possessed. And so it's funny. It is really weird how things work. Someone had given me the St. Dominic Catholic pendant of exorcisms.
Yeah.
I didn't know I had it on, but I took it off and put it on him. And he starts screaming and howling. And some of the guys from the tour held this guy. And after a minute, it passed. And he's like, "I feel better now." And he went home and he sent an email saying he had a great trip and thanks so much. But stuff like that just is like, oh my gosh, what do we do? The guy's screaming and going nuts. He's a ghost tour guest. So, it's part of the tour now. And I've had that sort of experience over where Eli likes to do tours, which is Madams of Mayhem. So there's something about that area. I don't know what it is, but it's by far one of the freakiest places on all the tours. Yeah.
No way. That is so crazy.
Yeah.
Like you
Crazy.
come for a couple of drinks and you leave with.
I try to tell them, "Hey, we're just tour guys here, guys. We love the paranormal too, but at the end of the day, we're, ghost guys." And when you get to that level, that's just really weird. And the funny thing is, Eli doesn't want to always talk about things that go that deep on the tours. It happens more than you think.
Right.
A lot of people are curious about the paranormal, and that's why they're on a ghost tour. And I always tell them, I said, "Hey, you didn't pick this ghost tour tonight." And they kind of looked at me dumbfounded. And I said, "It picks you. It picked you. It wanted you to come out tonight." And it's funny, but a lot of people have crazy stories like that, and they just won't tell you until it's been, one or two bars on the pub crawl to kind of loosen up a little bit. And then the stories start coming out like that. And everybody seems to have one. It's just weird. It's crazy.
Yeah.
That definitely is like next level experience. I mean, what a deal. What a deal that guy got for the price of a pub crawl.
It's just one of those things where you kind of take it as business as usual. So we get, stories like that. But when you have a guy like that, that's actually manifesting possession or some form of unwanted control, that's really weird. And you're like, is this real or is it not? It's real, 75% of the time. It's crazy.
Well, with Rich and I, we've seen a lot of this stuff. I've seen Richard get pushed down by spirits. Again, him and I have a different way of doing this. He likes to use Tube or Spirit Box, and there's a difference in how you call the spirits. I'm more old school. We call it speaking to the wind. There is a way of calling them, but I always tell folks, you always want to put the guardrails on, because when you call the spirits, make sure you're calling the spirits of light, the ancestor spirits, not just any spirit. And so I tell people that's really dangerous, because they ask me, "Well, how do you do that?" And I always say, be really cautious about it, because you want to be respectful of the spirits at all time. So again, Rich and I just have different ways of doing that. And it's interesting. Sometimes if we end up on each other's tours, it is kind of funny to see the different dynamics, even though we're family, how we present the spirit world to people. We do get people coming on these tours and they have whatever background, they bring something with them. Or I've had people, and Rich up there, we do the pub crawls. I've had people I've taken on these pub crawls concerning the Emily Morgan Hotel. We had an experience. We talk about poltergeist, the knocking spirits, the noisy spirits. Be careful. I said, I hope no one has crystals on them. Some people try to call the spirits. Sure enough, everyone said no, but this woman lied. She did. And I didn't find out till the next day when I happened to be at Pat O'Brien's, this bar, and she and her friends came up and said a spirit followed them, and the poltergeist was still with her, and I had to remove the spirit from her. She said when we were doing the tour, something was tapping her on the shoulder. Every 20 minutes or so. They did that throughout the tour. When they went back to their hotel, it was on the door, bangings on the window. They went to the Tower of the Americas, she forgot how I showed her, tried to rebuke the spirit, and the elevator shut off. and the fire department had to come out, reactivate the elevator, get them out of it. So when I saw her at the bar, I showed her how to rebuke it. But I told her, why did you do that after I told you? And, I just told you, now you see it's not fun and games. So that was it. But everything on that tour ended well, just so you know.
Just one day I was by myself, this quick tapping on the back of my shoulder, and I whipped around thinking, how could I miss somebody like in the office? And there's nobody there. And I was like, oh, okay, just going to get back to work. Scary, like when you're not expecting that. I mean, we joke, we had a ghost in the office. I don't know. I took him home with me one day, and I don't think he's been back since at my house anymore. So not sure where I lost him on the way. But you think that you're safe from everything or free from everything, and then you feel something and you're like, what is going on here? Something more here with us. Too, a little bit of an eye opener of like, what just happened? And like, what are we doing? It's always
I had a crazy experience I got to throw out there. Years ago, I was in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I was touring an old aircraft carrier called the USS Hornet, and it was active with the U.S. against the Japanese. Well, I ride sport bikes, and I had on a Suzuki Japanese bike pullover. Didn't think twice about it. Well, we were touring the ship, and we were in the operating rooms, and my son and I were both looking at different operating bays. You can't go in past the bottom door; it's just on display. And something tapped my shoulder. Just like you had mentioned, it's like, and I ripped around like, oh my gosh. And then it tapped my son's shoulder. And there's nothing, like, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. And I was just sitting there freaking out, like, what the heck was that? And one of the commanding officers walked over and he goes, it's your shirt. And I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, we were in the campaign in the Pacific against Japan. And I looked down and I said, he goes, they don't like your pullover and they died in here. And I'm like, oh man, that's when I took my pullover off. I put it inside out, put it back on, not to make any more ghosts upset. But it happened after I took it off and flipped it inside out. But the weird thing was the officer came over like, oh yeah, we get this all the time. And this was years ago. And I never forgot about that. I thought, how weird is that those spirits who died there were letting me know that day, hey, we don't like your pullover, take off, buddy. And it's just weird. And we turned around like nobody's business and there's nothing there.
Right. Yeah.
Since then, it's just gotten worse, or I guess better. So yeah, there's those taps are freaky, and it seems to be a common theme.
Yeah. I woke up this morning, I think it was 2:30, to my 6-year-old tapping my chest to wake me up.
Oh, yeah.
More, and then like big tapping. Move over. But like as soon as that happens and you're sleeping, you're like, what? It's always it's a nice way to wake up without an alarm clock.
Yes.
Where would be some place that you would want to go check out, like a haunted place, if you could just go either do like walk through on your own or maybe go do more of a deep dive into it? Where's some place you'd like to go?
Well, for me, I would really like to go to Honolulu, Hawaii. There's a lot of spirit activity there with the ancestor spirits, and I would find that fascinating. Many moons ago, both Rich and I had lived over there in Hawaii, and it's a fascinating place. So for me, I would find that absolutely fascinating to go over there.
I would pick England. After all these conversations with all these guests, the number one favorite is Jack the Ripper pub crawl in London, England. I get this all the time, and I finally figured it out. If you debunk it, it's because the alcohol content in London is higher than it is in California. So anybody on a drinking tour is gonna have a better time. So you can sort of debunk it, but everybody's like, hey, it's a fun tour, but it's also creepy. So I would say that I would pick London, England, Jack the Ripper.
I did recently read something. There was a conspiracy that Jack the Ripper was connected to somewhere in Georgia. Was it?
Yeah.
Do you
There's
remember?
a lot of conspiracies around that.
There's a lot of theories. One thing I would say concerning that, when you talk about people like a serial killer, if you will, people ask if I do serial killer tours. I do not. But when you deal with serial killers, they have a negative, we call it a negative energy. In the old days, they say it's a demonic energy, but it drives them. And so someone like Jack the Ripper, that type of stuff, I don't know specifics on, the Georgia or whatever, but I'm sure I don't think it was one person. There have been others. That sort of goes into the land of conspiracy if we were to dig through that.
Yes.
Yeah. We were just talking last week about Garth Brooks. Apparently every time he tours a city, there's like a murder. There's some Reddit rabbit holes. And come
Yeah.
out of
Hey, that's speaking of touring. If I had a second, I would choose San Antonio for the Gunther Hotel. The Gunther Hotel is haunted mostly with good spirits or spirits like us, but it also has the serial killers. It has Walter Emmerich, this guy in that hotel ground up a lady in a meat grinder, for God's sakes,
Well,
and
there's some,
and
there's some disputes
and
on how that happened, but
right. And then, but the weird thing is that 2 floors down on the fourth floor is where Robert Johnson, the gentleman that sold his soul to the devil on the Crossroads, recorded Crossroads Blues in the same hotel. So we find it interesting. They're retroing that hotel now, so it'll be back open and available on Go City Tours as soon as they can do it. But that hotel has a lot of paranormal punch. So I would say, there's a lot of places to pick a favorite. I'd pick London, England, because of what I've heard about Jack the Ripper tour. But I'd also, if it was a tour and yes, I'd want to see Robert Johnson. I'd want to see where that gentleman, if he sold a soul to the devil and it worked, for goodness sakes, where did he record that sort of thing? So that hotel, I would say, has a lot of punch as well. That's one of my favorites.
I bet your Thanksgiving dinner is like your conversation Thanksgiving.
Right.
It's a different family, I'll tell you that. I mean, when Richard and I go out and do this type of stuff, this is the type of stuff where him and I have some disagreement, because when you go into certain places, he goes into it full throttle, and I'm cautious because when you have negative or demonic energy, be very careful it doesn't attach to you. Because when you're interacting, you can give verbal or non-verbal agreement, and you can have negative energy attached to you, negative spiritual energy, and you can take that home with you. I've had things follow me home. I know Richard has as well. And so one thing you want to do is a little bit of a cleanse when you leave a tour, especially if you get a lot of demonic or shadow activity.
Yeah. Have you ever accidentally brought something home with you?
Yes.
Can you further tell us about it?
I will tell you something very unusual. I'll keep it brief, but one of the tours, again, it was a Madams of Mayhem tour, it's a family. And afterwards, we did the tour. They had their daughter with them, and she was involved in Satanism. And so they had a lot of negative activity in the house. And when I was, working with them on this briefly, turned out the grandmother was a satanic witch. And so there was a covering in the house, a lot of negative energy. I did tell them what to do to get out of it, but I said, because you've given ground, you will have pushback, but books on magic and all of those type of things. And I had a visitation that night when I went home, a lot of shadow activity following me home. And that night it really appeared, as most of the times it does, as a lucid dream. Yeah. And it was just a negative dream. But in the dream, I saw the family. I saw us having that conversation, and something demonic warned me further into someone they own. And so I rebuked it, and it did leave me. But I woke up, having like heart palpitations on the ground, and I thought I was stroking out. I passed out. I woke up again that morning and had severe pain in my body where that entity had assaulted me. And so but it couldn't affect me further because I had rebuked it. There's rules to this, and so long as you stay within the guide rails, evil like that can't harm you. Sorry to go out in left field on that one.
This is great conversation, because it's something more that you don't expect to hear on tour, maybe, but also just gives the insight to the guides. And you guys all go home at the end of the night, and sometimes you are dealing with things that happen on tour that maybe are not that pleasant experience, that had a good tip. Sometimes it's a tip you don't want.
Yes.
What is something, or Rich, do you have something to add to that about anything that Eli that?
Yes, we're being very cautious in what we say. A lot of things happen, from levitations to all sorts of weird happenings, usually poltergeist related. I get poltergeist stuff. I get those knocks on the door. Nobody's there. And so I know what it is. You have to remove it and cast it out. But the thing is, yes, I tell people on my tour, as a matter of fact, I say, first off, when we're starting the tour, who believes in ghosts? Why are you on the tour? Obviously, you want to get spooked tonight, right? Well, a lot of them are on the tour because they want to believe, right? And something happens on the tour, and it really freaks them out, and it kind of scares them. But it's mostly happenings like that, poltergeist type knockings and things. Sometimes we get manifestations where you'll see something. I've had weird experiences, some good, some bad. There's a Catholic Charities building that I'll sometimes meet a friend at, and inside are all nurses, and they do, good work for mostly kids. So they're finding treatments and doctors and that good stuff. And they have a call center in there and such. And it's a fairly big office. Well, I was cutting through one day without any authorization, just cutting through. And it's weird. You know how you'll feel like, hey, there's something behind me or there's something over my shoulder? I got that feeling, and I've learned to trust my instinct, especially on these tours. And I looked over my shoulder ever so slightly, and there goes a shadow. And at the same time, I got the understanding what the shadow was. It was a guardian spirit. I know this sounds nuts, but I'm like, and I just knew, and I said, I'm no threat to them. I respect the work that they're doing. I just want you to know I'm no threat. I will do what I can to help them. I have nothing but respect for them. And then the shadow was there for a minute. I looked over again and I saw it go off through a wall. And I was so freaked out. I'm like, one, I can't believe that I get goosebumps talking about it, but I'm like, I can't believe that shadow came so close to me. And two, I can't believe I knew what to say to it right in the moment, right? It was talking to me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is weird in a good way though, right? And then we've had the opposite. The opposite stuff's not good, where Eli only tells you lightly what happens. I mean, full demonic attack. And the thing is because you pick things up in these hotels. And I always tell people, hey, you're going to get gum on your feet like you're in New York City. We're going to go through a little quick procedure to wipe those off when we're done. And it's kind of funny because they laugh at that, but we're serious. And we know that you've got to cleanse after, going into some of these establishments because of the history. And it's just funny because nobody really believes until something happens. So my sort of tour, we're really messing with I like to get the guests involved and make them part of the tour. They have a lot more fun when they're involved. So if they download a ghost tube or a spirit box as they're kind of rambling along and I'm doing my thing, showing the different facts and figures, oh, and this happened and that happened. And we're sort of talking, they get responses on their spirit box. So a lot of times it allows them as a guest to take part in the tour, more like ownership, and they seem to have a much better time when they're getting feedback on their electronics. And so that's pretty cool. But at the same time, right, we both taken weird things home and had some crazy experiences. Crazy.
This is where Richard and I will disagree. Is he likes to use devices just sort of to the wind. I know they're there. I can feel them. But, we have, for example, for me, being in the basement, the old morgue of the Emporium of the Emily Morgan, people running to your spirit box, and you can hear a voice calling my name. And it would say Eli, or it will say, you tall like him, who? Rich. It's mentioning Richard. And it calls me twins sometimes, but those are spirits that recognize us. And there are times I will go on Richard's tour, for example, and just be incognito. I'm just a person on the tour. And people who are using spirit box, you'll hear a voice say to them, why is he here? What, it's talking to you? I don't know. I don't do anything like this. And it will say, he lies. He knows he's here, and they know us. So they know me. They know Richard. We don't know, but how interesting that is. So I always tell Richard, and I tell people on my tour, when we go out, we may not see manifestations of spirits. Rest assured, they see us. And the proof is in the pudding, because people kind of laugh about it. But I have friends that are rangers at the Alamo or police officers, and the bike patrols will come up, hey, ghost man, and would you like to tell the group? And they talk about ghost stuff, and the group's like, that's an officer, a police officer telling them, or that is a ranger at the Alamo. And the rangers and stuff, when we're at the Alamo, they see stuff, we call them fire spirits. It's an orb with a halo around it of fire. Stars, we call them. And these orbs have different signatures, red and blue, green and black. So they're seeing them. And yes, they see shadows and hear voices. But again, that's not coming just from me. That's coming from rangers or from police officers. And they have sometimes trouble digesting that, because you can imagine if you have a gun and a badge and talk about that, how long are you going to have the gun and badge for?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I know on Nashville at the Capitol, they have the same thing with the Capitol Police, have their own stories when they patrol at night, and they will come to the guides and they'll say, hey, this happened. And the guy's like, oh, okay. Yeah, I believe you. And they're like, you do? Oh, the history. Like, yeah. It's just kind of that like disbelief.
Medical Arts Hospital back in the day, it was built by Ralph Cameron. He was the architect in 1924. If the old morgue was below, we also have the old crematorium. And since 1984, when it became the Emily Morgan Hotel, they've opened that up. But there's a lot of activity there. For the psychiatric ward, that's a very active floor. And the hotel, they're very nice. They're letting us take people through it, if you will. And I've taken surgeons, I've taken doctors, I've taken a psychiatrist through there. And let me share something with you, how interesting. I took 2 psychiatrists through there on different tours. One of them was a man, and he felt very euphoric, good about the tour. But again, remember, psychiatrists would help people with mental issues back then. So the spirits probably let him know how grateful they were, etc. There was a woman that showed up. She was traveling by herself, and she was dressed like Wall Street. You know, I thought, why do you go on a ghost tour? She's in heels and stuff. But she was very smart. It turned out she was a professor of psychiatry, a very smart woman. And she didn't believe in any of this. She just likes to do it for fun. We went in there, and I forewarned her. Usually people with a medical background will get uptick in activity. We were down in that area, and she was looking around a little bit away from the group. Well, she came up to me, and she used the F word, get me the blank out of here. And then when we did go out, she did finish the tour, but she felt there was a male presence threatening her, and it really concerned her. And so I rebuked that spirit. But it's coming again from a psychiatrist that does not believe. And I will tell you, she left that tour very open-minded.
I mean, how could you not when you're something you wish that guests knew before they came on tour?
Before the guests came,
let me answer this.
I'll let Richard go with this.
That the pub crawl, the drinks are not included. For some reason, the people read it. It doesn't, and I've looked and I've searched it. It doesn't say it anywhere, but you always get one guy. It's like, hey, why aren't the drinks included? I wish they would read the description a little better because they're not included. That's my number one peeve. That's it.
We haven't had that in there. And then we're always like, in what world could you go on a tour and get drinks? What do you think we're serving? Do they think we have a giant cooler of WAP? Or like when you say you're the world's, like, you know, we say like walking and like all of this, like enjoy the streets, like walk the streets, you know, like that wording. They're like, oh, we have to walk. Like,
yes.
One thing I would say on that, which I tell people on the tour, they said, would you offer like a Ghostbuster experience? And I say, folks, we don't, but I say, listen to this. Would you want, if you're on a bus, you're removed from the activity. You need to physically touch these places, feel them. And if you are serious about spirit phenomena, then it's best to walk it. And so they will say, okay, we understand. And I say, yeah, you could go on a bus, but you're separating yourself. You could feel stuff, but you're more likely if you're walking the street and counting.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And I'm sorry, just to throw something on that. You guys were actually talking about the Emily Morgan, Eli. The Emily Morgan, when you go inside, it's something that a bus couldn't provide. So you get a kinesthetic, a visual connection to the paranormal when you enter that hotel. And the best part is the operating room on the 13th floor. The bathrooms happen to be in the basement where the morgue was, where the crematorium was. So guests get to experience that. If they have to use the restroom, that's where you have to go. And that happens to be down in the crematorium. So when they experience that and they're not on a bus and they're able to then, you know, experience that real time, and they have a ghost tube running, they're even that more connected, and it makes the tour go up by 1,000%. But in that hotel, the reason why I mentioned that, the paranormal footprint is so huge from every floor, the middle ward, the operating room, the crematorium, and even the second floor. I love the second floor because it has a swimming pool. It's a swimming pool inside, and the swimming pool has a metal bottom. Those were all the operating tables
let's
that
also,
people died on.
So we have there's a lot of, so when we talk about a lot of this, you want to be cautious. You know, some things go into different disputes on the building aesthetics, but that building's active also because in the town, one of the largest burial grounds for Native Americans in the Southwest. So preceding the Alamo, they buried there. The Spanish, finding out the area was sacred there, and also where we have Mother Church, San Fernando Cathedral, they were sacred to Native Americans, and they went out of their way and built what is now our church or cathedral, San Fernando, and then later they would build the mission. We would have the mission church where we have Alamo now because it was sacred to Native Americans. So we get manifestations there, not to mention those that died during the siege. The Emily Morgan, you could throw a stone over Alamo wall there, and you can imagine the carnage. So that's a lot of the activity we get also within that building. Again, when you're down to the morgue, you're below where the people died on street level fighting with the Alamo. And you also were below where Native Americans buried their dead. In the old days, they would, disinter remains of Native Americans to move them out of their way to build these big buildings and cults and other things. A lot of people come to these buildings to practice magic. A lot of us call that sloppy magic sometimes because they're opening doors and portholes and they're not closing them. And so that contributes to this experience that we have there. Again, I put guardrails on my tours. I don't know if Kurt is doing that with his tours.
We're out to get everybody having a good time. So, but it's one of those things where you want to use, I like these paranormal tools to bring the guests more in touch with the tour because it makes it more, personalized for them. And they seem to like it. Some people are afraid of it. So, but it's just one of those things where it gives you as a tour guide another level of participation, if you will, from the audience. And people like it because you're doing facts and figures and naming spirits and notables that were in the area and the hotel and the history of each and every stop. But when you have another level, that other auditory level, it really, people like it. Oh, I didn't want to say anything, tour guide, but about 3 blocks back, I heard this weird voice and something touched me. And it happens all the time. So I like to kind of mess with Sasquatch, if you will, and get the guests more involved. But yeah, the paranormal in the Emily Morgan and the Alamo grounds is so huge. If you just slow yourself down, clear your mind, open your mind up, and things start happening. So people have, déjà vu on the tour. So they're more sensitive to the spiritual side. And those people will usually feel more connection in the Emily Morgan, which is really weird. But it happens on every tour, at almost every stop. And I try to let people know, hey, you're not just viewing this paranormally active building or this hotel. You're part of it because you're running a device that you're literally talking to the dead real time. And so it just builds up on that. We try not to go into EMF or anything like that. But when you can show a cold signature footprint and you're simultaneously getting positive feedback auditory, it really backs things up. Where they're like, yeah, I noticed it got really cold when you were talking and I picked this up on my spirit box. And so it allows them to be part of the tour because they all see ghost adventurers and they want to do this. So I found that a lot of people want the history, but also a lot of people want to walk along and interact. So I started doing that. I only mention that because it's good and bad. It does draw stuff and it's a heck of a lot of fun, but it does draw activity. Let's just leave it there. It does spiritual activity for sure.
Richard's here opening every possible door and portal and tiny wormhole back around again.
Yes. At the end, yes, like a jar, you want to put the lid on.
Where do you want to take your tours in the future? Is there anything you want to learn more about? Any stories you wish you could tell or want to incorporate? I'm
open to all of it. I mean, I know for those of us that do this, we know the reality of it. I think the fact that we're mortal, the time's going to come and we're going to pass. I think it is a fascination for all of us. What might we encounter out there? I would, with my tours, to explain more concerning orbs and the signatures of orbs, because the different colors have meanings. People like that. All my tours for people if they're open to that way. And again, speaking to the wind, calling to the spirits, you ask the ancestor spirits to watch over the spirits of light. And one thing I would put out there is, just to be really blunt about it, there is positive and negative energy, or good and evil, when you go out and do these type of things. And rest assured, good is always stronger than evil. I have never seen it fail. When you understand that and you carry that within yourself, you'll walk the streets like a champion, because negative or evil stuff will move out of the way. And rebuke it, especially champions. I always tell folks that in my tours, rest assured, when you know stuff and you know how to counter negative spirits, they won't mess with you. So that's sort of where I'd like to take my tours more into the understanding that good is always stronger than evil.
Yeah. There's other places around San Antonio that we don't have on the tour that are real freaky, like the Masonic Lodge, for instance. We just, it's one of those things. And there's other buildings and such that I'm sure will be open for business because they're doing a huge retrofit downtown, brand new Alamo, brand new visitor center. And that stirred up a lot of activity, which is cool. And the funny thing is, on our tours, he's more cautious and wants everybody to experience the paranormal, whereas I want people to experience the paranormal. I want them to be, something just touched me, Rich. I don't know what it was. Oh my gosh. And we're moving and we're walking and we're headed to the next bar. So I would say maybe bars or locations that aren't currently on the tour, 1 or 2 that would maybe pull the volume up a little bit on the tours, because there's a lot happening downtown in that footprint.
Yeah, I was really amazed. I mean, again, I had previously lived in Dallas, and I always joke that there's nobody that loves Texas more than Texas. Dallas thing. We were traveling to San Antonio and then a few other spots that we were on our vacation. It was a totally different vibe that we got different places. And it makes me wonder, had we lived somewhere else than Dallas, if I would have enjoyed it more. I always felt like Dallas was so whitewashed of every history. It was just one giant master plan community after another. But then you go to some of these other spots, and I was just shocked at the history. I was shocked at the true, it's just like different small town vibes that were these actually huge cities in Texas. And I think it's just really overlooked in general. I joke that Galveston, I thought, was just a spring break destination. I had no idea all the history there. I thought it was just some weird place on the map. And then I was like, where are we?
Yeah.
And crazy. It was just so much fun for me to learn about these different places that I wish we didn't have the chance to go on tour. It's just the timing that we were there with our kids. It didn't work out, but learning about everything in San Antonio, it's stuff that I never would have learned every book ever about it was way more than just the Alamo, just a small part of it. So just hearing your stories, it makes it sound so much more interesting than anything I learned on my own. Loved it. Like, I love hearing all of this and hearing the stories and the tour things and all of that. So awesome stuff.
Yeah. It's fun because of what happens here. You know, I always tell folks, hey, it's not what you see today. It's what this spot was that usually generates a lot of activity. And if you look at San Antonio, you're like, oh, that's a, kind of a decent sized Midwest Southern town and the funny thing is, what happened here? You have the guy that sold his soul for rock and roll recorded here, John Johnson's Room. So, John Cougar came here. The Rolling Stones, there are stories about them. They played the Alamo Dome. They wanted to go to Robert Johnson's room. And it's just interesting things like that. Carol Burnett was born at the Knicks Medical Center, right in the center of downtown San Antonio. It's closed now, and it's been closed for some time. They're retroing it into a luxury hotel. But little weird facts like that are just random and odd as to the interest in a smaller town like San Antonio. And for instance, JFK, there's pictures of JFK going past the same hotel where Robert Johnson recorded Crossroads Blues on the 4th floor, where Walter Emmerich ground up a lady in a meat grinder, for God's sakes, on the 6th floor. The same hotel. And out front, JFK in 1963 rolled by in the same limousine brigade. Those pictures are on Google. And they made a left, and the next day he was in Dallas. And, so it's weird, the footprint, and I think a lot of people know more, and I'm discovering there's yet more.
Well, there you go. So
weird things.
There's definitely a lot of history here. I think it's best to leave it at that. I just noticed our time was kind of running out, but
yes.
I was going to say, there's a lot of history here for folks to check out, folks to come and just see the town. We'll show you places you wouldn't ordinarily get to see. I show people North Wall, that's famous at the Alamo. No one ever goes over there, but I take people there. And also, we have a history of the mafia here. We have Prohibition era bootleggers. We have tunnels under this town. There's a lot of history with that. So we're just touching on some of it. But yes, we could go on, but I just noticed our time, and I just want to make sure we're not overrunning our time.
We're good. So one thing that we noticed when we were walking back to our car at one point, one of my kids dropped something on the sidewalk, and we went to pick it up, and right where it had dropped was the original boundary wall of the Alamo.
Yes.
Wow.
And I was like, well, this was really random. I was like, I wasn't expecting way over here, outside of all of that. I was like, oh, that's curious. More. I always say that if I would have learned history like this when I was in high school, I probably would have went into a much different direction in my life versus where I ended up here. Maybe not. There's so much more history to learn that we are not taught in the right way. This is living history, and it's so much more interesting. And I don't know if it's just the way that we're able to grasp it better as adults, or if it's presented better to us now, or what it is, but it's always so fascinating. And I love hearing the stories from the guides, because you make it come alive even more on tour. And that's what we love.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's fun. I mean, if you're not having fun, then probably isn't the right thing for you to do. But if you're having fun, it's just, how can you not have fun? If you're into ghosts and the paranormal, San Antonio and the Alamo is a great place to start. I always tell folks, hey, if you can't find hauntings at the Alamo, for goodness sakes, good luck. And it's funny because Eli and I know that there's so much activity downtown, so much. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, a lot to uncover. Well, thank you both so much for your time today. This was a great conversation about San Antonio and just all your experiences. You guys could probably write a book. Take it and make it a tour. This was really fun. So thank you both for your time. Thank you both for just the energy you pour into your tours. Really, it makes San Antonio a special place. And I'm definitely seeing that now that I'm getting to know both of you, and anyone who gets to go on tour with you is really in for a good time.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, guys. Well, this concludes today's episode of Hometown Hauntings. Make sure you check us out across all of our social media channels, and we will see you next time.
Hometown Hauntings is brought to you by Ghost City Tours, the largest ghost tour company in the nation. With tours in over 20 cities, including New Orleans, Savannah, Charleston, and beyond, we bring haunted history to life with spine-tingling tales and expert storytelling. Ready to experience the paranormal up close? Book now at ghostcitytours.com to explore a haunted city near you.